alone.
That's right. Welcome to Awakening Warriors. We talk about life, love, lessons, and learning.
Yep.
I have to apologize to everybody that was gonna go on Spotify and fucking try to listen to our episode there, or wherever they listen to it, besides YouTube, of course, because at the very last second, when we ended this last recording, my phone died and lost the recording. So,
Literally went to go hit like end, done, whatever, and was like, no, my phone just died.
Yeah, it was stupid. Well, yeah. So, anyways.
But it's up on YouTube, so if you haven't gotten a chance yet, it's there.
Yeah. What's new?
I don't think anything. Which sounds kind of lame, but I mean, we're busy, we're doing stuff. Working on the basement still, but getting not close to wrapping up, but making definitely good progress on the last room that we're going to do for a while.
I feel like the hard part's over. Now it's really just paint, trim, and doors.
Yep.
I plan on getting paint done this week, so for sure. Probably paint doors, and then hopefully trim, we'll see.
My parents are going to be in town next weekend. So that's upcoming. That's not new. Not yet. But upcoming.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Same old shit. Rowdy Ram is getting close to the opening date. Soft opening is on the 1st as of right now. So that's exciting. It's right around the corner. Get that done and move on to the next thing. So. So, what'd you bring? I see you have a book today.
Show and tell. Today's topic. So, I am reading a book called Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. And what? That makes it entertaining. And yeah, so when we were talking about what we wanted, discussing, brainstorming what we want to talk about, Montana you brought up, like, why... Or codependence.
Why you're so codependent?
No, I was going to say, why not codependency, but that's not what you said. So, yeah, I brought my book because, I mean, I'm probably like 100 pages in, but I still, literally 100. But I think just pulling out some specifics could be helpful because so, to go back in time a little bit, this book was recommended to me by David when I started working with him. So that was a while ago.
2020, 2021.
Oh, yeah, because did we have Xander, or did we just talk about it?
No, we had Xander.
Okay. So, years ago, but then I finished my last book, and I happened to come downstairs, and here I am. So, Codependent No More. How to Stop Controlling Others and Start Caring for Yourself. So, I have codependent tendencies.
Strong.
Yeah. It depends. It really does. But even just recently, as we went to the movies on Thursday, and I, in my head, was like, I'm going to wear sweats, I'm going to wear comfies, I'm going to be comfy. So then I see you walking down the hall, and you're, like, in legit jeans, and I'm like, why are you wearing those? Like, I wanted to wear comfy pants, and you're like, I don't know, I'm just going to wear these. Like, what if I run into somebody I know, is what you said. And then I was like, I guess fine, like, I can stay in these jeans. So then a few minutes pass, and then I see you, like, changing your pants into sweatpants. And I'm like, what are you doing? And you're like, you said you wanted to wear sweatpants. And I was like, so then I put my sweatpants on. And so I literally said that. I was like, how codependent of me. Like, I was, like, already planning to wear sweatpants. This is what I want to do. And then you're doing something different. And so that automatically changes my mind. And then we're back to the thing that I originally wanted. So then I changed my mind again. So that's like a perfect example of codependency because I couldn't have made my own decision. I couldn't have done what I wanted to do because you were doing something different. And so for me, a lot of times it looks like forming to whatever you decide.
A more dominant personality.
Whatever you do, yeah. And so, Yeah. What do you wanna? I wanna find where she defines it.
I don't have codependent issues, so this is all about you.
You don't have codependent issues, but we've already talked about this in terms of our trauma bond. Like, we were the perfect match for that because I do have codependency tendencies, codependent tendencies, and you
Are awesome.
not anymore, but definitely early on fell more towards that like abusive side of the spectrum. Emotionally, verbally, not like he was hitting me or anything.
No, even though when she needed it, still didn't. So good for me.
So one thing that I literally just told him upstairs too, I said, this book has really like normalized my experience because I've known that I tend to be codependent. And so I'm like, why? Like, my childhood wasn't like bad. Like, there were things, there was like alcohol very often around. And so I think that some of that made me like as a kid just very, at times, uneasy, and because I didn't even really fully understand what being drunk was, and I just remember like my parents coming home and being different, and so I don't know if like that just gave me some like uneasiness, some whatever, and then I felt that when they came home that way that I needed to be very like eggshelly and like watch how they were acting and control, because we've talked about that. I tend to try to control things in situations, and so I think like that probably started some of that of my like need to feel to control and to be very like, even when my parents would argue, I remember being upstairs in my room and they'd be downstairs somewhere, and I would like put my ear to the floor to like be able to hear what they were saying, because it felt better for me to like know exactly what was happening, because I felt like I was able to control, so like codependent. But anyway, so I said that this was like normalizing my experience because there were certain like, it just, I don't know. She talks about codependency is really easy to fall into if you have, like if you're a parent caring for a sick child, or if you have, or like alcoholism, drugs, like all of these things like are running rampant in your family. And so I'm like, why do I have these things? But she also talks about how everybody's experience is like their own. And one person might need just small little examples in their life and turn to codependency, and one person might need like a whole host of all the things before they turn to codependency. So it's all just different based on each person in each case, which makes sense. But
I think a lot of it's just who you are, obviously, and then a lot of it also has to do, nature and nurture. I look at my personal childhood experience, and like my sister and I were very like, what do you say I call that? Very like on your own, very early, independent. Yeah, very independent at a very young age, right? And I guess I can't really speak for a lot of my sister's whole life, but what I can speak of is my personal experience and what we were seeing, because my sister and I are 6 years apart. So, but I also don't see my mother being, ever having that, creating a codependent issue there. Well, just hear me out. So she gave a lot of opportunities for us to be independent and not codependent. Like, my mom didn't fucking do a lot of shit for us as far as, just day-to-day shit, like even homework. Like, she didn't really help us with homework. She didn't really fucking, often make us meals. Like, as soon as we were to the age of like doing our own laundry, or, making our own meals, or cleaning out the dishwasher and shit like that, like she basically had us on it.
Codependency though goes way beyond just like not having opportunities to be independent.
Yeah, I know.
Like, your situation, your upbringing did bring up a codependent. It wasn't you, but it's your sister.
I know, I agree. And that's what I'm saying. That's nature and nurture, A lot of it has to do with a lot of it has to do with me as an individual, but I think it was the overall impact, because she is very codependent on a lot of things. Like, she's codependent on men, she's codependent
So is
on...
your dad. Not on men, just codependent.
Yeah, my dad's super codependent, but I also recognize where that came from. Like,
right.
No, I don't know all the fucking details about his childhood, but I know enough to know where that was. And obviously I see where my parents' relationship is even developed. It was because of the codependency.
Right.
You know, like
well, that's like another example of like a perfect match.
Yeah, my mom's relatively competent, and you know she probably did a lot of stuff for him in the beginning, and then he was like, "Oh, okay, great, this is wonderful," and then like, because my dad's a very simplistic person, you know, he never really had to, you know, problem solve or take care of himself necessarily because he lived with his mother, and then he lived with my mother, so you know, like he was never out on his own. Like I don't, from what I understand at least.
Well, and the reason why initially I was like, because you were like like hearing just some of your stories from your childhood, like those, again, they did lean that direction for your sister to help like develop those habits, but like just hearing some of that, because that's like the walking around on eggshells and like never knowing what version of this person you're gonna get, and like her unpredictable behavior, like that's what creates codependency, because it's not just being not able to be dependent on yourself. It's not just like independence. Like it's a lot deeper than that. And that's what that's what I think part of it too is just how you are as a person. Because I'm naturally like the peacemaker, the people pleaser, I don't know though, naturally, or did that come through nurture? But either way, because like some of these examples that she talks about are things that people who are codependent experience, are like low self-worth, caretaking, self-repression. So like, I'm going to repress my wants and my needs so that I can fulfill yours. Abandoning the self, communication problems, abundance of anger and guilt. So it's not just like, because we've talked about this, like in my childhood I had a lot done for me, and that could probably play a part in some of it for sure. And continues to, because I think in the relationship that we have, you just naturally take on a lot of that, and so I don't have to still. But it just perpetuates that more. But I think it goes well beyond just independence.
Can codependent people be good leaders?
I think recovering codependents can. I think if people are like in the thick of it, probably not. Because it's like the airplane example thing, right? If the masks fall down on the airplane, what are you supposed to do first? Put it on yourself. But somebody who is in the thick of their codependency won't even think about saving themselves first or doing anything for themselves first. They're going to do for others first, even if it means harm for them. So, I think recovering codependence can. And it's interesting because there's AA for people that are alcoholics, and then there's Al-Anon, which a few years ago this was also brought up to my attention, but it's like for family members and friends and close people to alcoholics. And so they talk about this because a lot of codependents find themselves in that group because they are living with somebody who needs them, who is very unpredictable, who is like, you know, doing all these terrible things for their family and for themselves. And so a lot of them find themselves in Al-Anon. And so a lot of people through that group are able to like start to work on their independence and start to work on, that's what it says, like to stop controlling others and caring for yourself, because then they're able to like stop putting all their time and energy into this person who they literally can't control, because you can't control anybody else, but they think they can, based off of trying to make them feel guilty or trying to act the perfect way so that they never drink again. Like all of those things are impossible. And so then once they get like to Al-Anon and get support and like start to really recognize like their habits that they're doing that are contributing to this, because it's like enabling a lot of times, that they can like recover or be in recovery, I guess. I don't know if you ever fully recovered like they say for alcoholics.
I think you can fully recover from anything personally. My belief, it just depends on how mentally strong you are and shit, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I get the point, I guess, and just saying that like there's always the potential for
there's always the potential for no matter what, though. There's a potential for me to becoming an alcoholic, even though.
Yeah, but if you already were a very strong addict, I think that like you have never been. No, that's not true. We talked about porn.
There's always a possibility no matter what. I think it comes down to how mentally strong you are. You know, like for me, you can be codependent on more than just like people too. Like you can be codependent on, you know, alcohol, or codependent on booze and shit like that. Like
I would call that more dependent on. The co means there's another being.
Co doesn't mean being.
Co is together. Co is two.
Exactly. Co is two. So there's alcohol and then there's you.
I would call it dependency, but we can agree to disagree.
That's fine. But in technicalities terms, like, you know, if you look up the definition of co, then it'll say just with, basically. It'll say that's the thing. It won't specifically talk about, you know, humans and blah blah blah. It might do, you know, deeper down in the definition, but not that that matters. So on my side of things, being like, I don't even mind that she's codependent that much, or you're codependent that much in certain areas, right? In other areas it's fucking super annoying. It's like, Jesus Christ. But on a lot of different stuff, you know, like, I don't know, even a good example. Like, I don't want you to be codependent in simple stuff, you know, things that you really don't need me. But,
like the outlets yesterday?
Yeah.
I was having a hard time.
Yeah.
And I just wanted you to, like, tell me how to do it, because I did not want to, like,
you're capable. You've done
put the time and energy into it and do it wrong.
You've fucking done outlets, plenty of outlets, so you know how to do outlets, but yet here you are fucking bugging me while I'm trying to fucking sand and do stuff, and, you know, like, well, if I gotta fucking pull myself away to be over here to do it, I might as well just do it myself, and then you might as well just fucking go upstairs and fuck off, you know?
So I would have happily.
I'm sure you would have, which is why I didn't give you. So, like, in on my side of things, because everybody's codependent to some degree. You know, in some way, in some degree, everybody's codependent.
That's what this talks about. Like, especially in relationship, like, there is a little bit of emotion, whether it's emotional or physical or whatever, dependency. Like, there is a normal amount of that, because that's just naturally how it works out. But there are points when it gets to, like, being unhelpful or unhealthy. It's
kind of like, I think like, things cross over in every aspect. Like, so for instance, everybody's a hypocrite, everybody's codependent, everybody's an addict, you know, so like when I think about these things, you know, I just think about to the level of the degree, you know,
right.
Is it unhealthy?
So I was thinking like a percentage.
yeah, is it unhealthy? Because no matter what, I don't care who you are, you're codependent, you're a hypocrite, you're this, you're that, right?
At least at times, yes.
Yeah.
Like, we all have those tendencies, for sure.
So, and as far as me and my perception goes, I'm codependent in some things, like, you know, like, I'd rather you come with me when I'm doing work than not come with me. If you're just going to sit there, especially if unless you're being productive, and I don't know if that's necessarily codependency, like...
It could be, though, because I think it sounds like it's a form of control.
Yeah.
Which is part of codependency.
Yeah, to a degree, I guess. Yeah, and I'm open to it being potentially codependency, but it's also not as strong, like, because I'll just fucking go and leave and go do whatever I need to do without, you know, hesitation. But it comes down to whether, you know, the reason I would even think about that is whether you're being productive or not. Like, okay, are you actually doing something productive, or are you not?
Which doesn't need to control my time.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, to a degree. Yes.
Okay, I want to back up a little because I wanted to start with this and then I forgot and I even read from the page. So this is just this author's specific definition of codependency, or of a codependent. So she gave a couple examples from other books and stuff that people have used, but she pulled hers, like, together from everybody else's. And she says, a codependent person is one who has let another person's behavior affect him or her, and who is obsessed with controlling that person's behavior.
And obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
Because the first sentence happens no matter what.
A codependent person is one who has let another person's behavior affect him or her.
Yeah. In one way or another, you'll always be... That'll always happen.
Yes.
Yeah. Because, like, even if you were to, you know, fucking not wash the dishes and I were like, oh, I'm going to wash the dishes, that would be fall in the thing, you know. Fall in that category.
Because my behavior of not doing the dishes would have affected you.
Yeah, yep. So no matter what, like, yeah, fuck, I'm codependent on the president. If the first sentence is the only thing. But then it adds the second part.
Who is obsessed with controlling that person's behavior.
Yeah.
Which I think when it comes to you and me, I think like my controlling, what I try to control most is like your perception of me, your feelings towards me, your, like, I very much, I want you to think of me in a positive light. I want you to like be loving and kind, and that's what I try to like control.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm obsessed necessarily, but there are moments, like even the sweatpants, whatever, like clearly I was obsessed enough with that to control that I literally flip-flop back and forth between sweatpants and jeans to a freaking movie. Like... Yeah.
And the only reason I changed was I thought about it, and then you brought it up, and I was like, nah, I guess, whatever. And I just decided, I was like, nah, okay. Because the jeans were tight and everything, so then I was like, because they weren't the other good jeans, like the Spanx jeans, you know, they're like jeans, and they were tight, so...
So a whole-on chapter that you will appreciate is on detachment. So she talks about how, like, removing the detachment from these other people, from their behavior, from their behaviors and actions, from their thoughts, from their feelings, is, like, a step in the right direction, and you can do it. She suggests doing it from love, like, I am detaching myself from this because I do love you and I care about myself, but she's like, if you can't do it that way initially and it comes from, like, I'm angry or... I'm guilty and that's why I'm detaching. She was like, it's better than not detaching at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so another way of being codependent is like codependent on your children. And I feel like those are the most dangerous ones personally.
Yeah, she talks about that, like the caretaking, and people just like lose their own identity in their kids.
Yeah, for sure. I am a mother, you know, and that is my identity. I think your mom had a huge thing on that. I think obviously she's overcoming it at this point to some degree, but
really,
to some degree.
I almost feel like it's opposite. I feel like once I moved out of the house, then things kicked up.
Probably, maybe you probably just noticed it because those tendencies were there. The fact her codependency was always there until you moved, and then once you moved, you just noticed them more.
Yeah, I was also obviously more mature at that point then.
Yeah. So, you know, when you're attached to, you're codependent to a certain identity, you know, because of your kids or, you know, your husband or your job or whatever else, that would really fuck shit up too. And I think codependency always has two people to play, you know, the codependent one and the other one.
I literally said that, and you're like, no, it can be alcohol and...
Well, yeah, that too.
Relationships.
I'm specifically talking about in relationships.
Okay, so yes, there is the codependent and the other person.
And also they could both be codependent. So there's all kinds of different variables, you know, like we could both be codependent on each other, or I could be codependent on you, or you could be codependent on me, vice versa. So... me as a person that's not as codependent as you know, you just have to recognize like the strengths and stuff that, you know, and set boundaries, I think.
Oh, for sure.
That's because you won't have the boundaries as much as I will, because you're the one that is codependent, so you're the one that, you know, needs that specific, you know, reinforcement essentially.
Yeah, what's that work? Like, not confirmation, but that like... I don't know, reinforcement was a good one. Yeah, I was just thinking boundaries for sure, and I think that's like part of what the detachment kind of is, because it's like you're setting this like line of like, I'm gonna engage in this conversation or with this person from like a healthy neutral place versus like so wrapped up in this person's problems and this person's, and for me, who I like consider myself an empath, like that has been difficult. And I think the more that I've been intentional with my empathy and not just so willy-nilly with it, I think like it's definitely served me, but I still have times when I get even like talking about my brother, and I told you, like, even just talking about this right now, like him thinking that he might think this thing specifically about you, I was like, I can feel it like in my chest, like I can feel that like I'm wrapped up into some potential situation that my brother might or might not be feeling and thinking. And then it's interesting because it almost like made it that much stronger because it involved him and it involved you. So then it like, I could just feel it just having this like hypothetical conversation. And I was like, how codependent, even with my own brother.
And with going back to your outlet situation, because I think that people can see my could leave that as not caring or disinterested. And for instance, of going back to the outlet thing, like you asking for help and whatever else. Like I knew you were capable of doing it. That's why I'm not fucking like going
Running
over
to
there.
the rescue.
Yeah, I'm not running to the rescue. Now, if I had a codependent issue of like being the hero or whatever else, I could have ran to you like, oh, this is how you do it, and like, so I feel important. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
where
but
you're
I don't give a
bro,
fuck.
leave me alone. Like,
Yeah.
do it. And you literally said, what would you do if I wasn't here?
Yeah, exactly.
I said, hire somebody. Because I was
Yeah.
just pissy.
Yeah, so like that's the role on my side. This could be anybody, but you have to like set those boundaries and be like, I'm not coming over here to fucking rescue you because you are capable of doing this. There's tons of stuff. There's tons of times that I don't want to do stuff, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like I'm like I should call Paul or I should call Phil or like call now, but back then I would just like ask Paul to come over. I had a slight, so I think I had a slight codependency issue with Paul. Slight, not huge or whatever. Because
So is our neighbor in Michigan.
Typically I'd call, but then like I would just like I would give up a lot sooner because I knew Paul would just be able to fucking ease my way through the situation.
Yeah.
Like so I had a slight codependency with Paul to some degree.
Right, when it came to like mechanical stuff and fixing stuff.
Yeah, fixing stuff or whatever else. Typically I'd fucking try it by myself first, or I'd inquire with him, and then he'd be like, okay, if you can't get it, let me know, and I'll come help you. And then I would try it, and then whatever else. But the problem is, I would quit a lot sooner, knowing that there was a backup there. I had that fallback there. So that was a mildly codependent issue or relationship that I had. So, and I don't think he would even call it that.
I don't think so.
But I am conscious enough to recognize like that was one of my downfalls or whatever. I don't know, whatever. Codependent relationships.
Codependent tendencies.
Yeah.
So another chapter, I'm just like going through these and picking out things that are interesting to me. So the next one was don't be blown about by every wind, which
I just made a post about that shit.
Oh yeah. So the reason that I like really related to this more was you specifically. I don't think that I'm necessarily blown about by every single wind, but when it comes to you, I could very much be like the sailboat without any freaking direction. So something that I underlined was, because she's talking about her experience. So she says, I reacted to what they might be feeling, thinking, or doing. And so I underline that because I do that at times where I think I know what you're thinking, or I think that you're going to get pissy at me, or I think that I know that you're feeling this way. And so I react based off of me just thinking how you might be feeling or acting. And she said, I was a puppet with strings hanging out, inviting and allowing anyone or anything to yank them. I scribbled out anyone or anything and put Montana. So for me, I was like a puppet with strings hanging out, inviting and allowing Montana to yank them. Because I do. Like, I give you some, not all the time. I guess it really just depends on where I am that day. Whether I'm standing on solid ground, whether I've got good sleep, I'm feeling good. But on the days when I am not mindful of that, it's very much like I give you lots of power, I give you lots of control, and then I'm emotionally all over the place based off of, I don't even know.
And that's an interesting thing too. I don't know where this exactly falls into codependency, but I just made a post recently about basically, not allowing other individuals to pass on their experience, their emotional experience, I should say. There's a time for that, right? There's definitely a time for that. If I'm going to a seminar or something, and I see Ed Milet talking and whatever else, like I want him to be able to transfer that emotional piece and that stuff. So, and when there is someone that is maybe not creating a beneficial emotion in your life. So, for instance, every once in a while I'll get calls about like with people in heightened states, saying this is happening and that's happening, and we need to do this and we need to do that. And they're very agitated or scared or whatever, excited, whatever the case might be. Well, then I could listen to them and like, oh my goodness, oh that's horrible, that's fucking awful, like what are we gonna do? Or I can sit there and listen to them and specifically just pull out the words that they're speaking of the facts specifically, um, and evaluate those words and facts, not necessarily based on the emotion, because I know who the individuals are. Now, if I were to call somebody or like whatever, and I would be freaking out, you probably know something's going down. You know what I mean? Because I'm able.
I'm even thinking about like the most recent example when like you had enough reason to be freaking out and you were like really trying to keep it like slow and controlled. You're like, everything's all right. He's like, I'll call you back in just a bit, like.
Yeah.
And that was like something to be freaking out about.
Yeah. I don't even know what you're talking about.
When we first moved here, and you calling on the phone.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You're like real calm, like
yeah.
you're like I'll tell you what's happening in a bit, like just let me. I'm like, okay, and I could tell clearly like you're trying to keep your calm.
Yeah.
But I was like, what the heck?
I was in a fucking panic state, but I was trying not to pass that on. Like I recognize that if I make a call, and that's not gonna fucking help anything, but there was information that you needed to know, basically, and I had to get that information to you without passing on the fucking emotional bearing
The piece of it,
yeah.
Well, it's really interesting because I think, and that's what I'm very aware of this. Like whenever you're in a space of like if it comes to you being injured or you like legitimately having like a pretty emotional response to something, that immediately gets me like very anxious because you aren't normally like that. So if it warrants a reaction from you like that, I'm like, holy shit, like this is serious.
Yeah, because I'm usually able to keep my cool and like just like level playing field no matter what the situation is, and so, and yeah, most people are
probably only like a handful of times that I can think about where like you were in a space or place to not be able to like manage something and you still were like relatively cool, but I'm like, oh my god, like yeah. What was I? Oh, this also hit home. Sometimes people behave in certain ways to provoke us to react in certain ways. If we stop reacting in these certain ways, we take all the fun out of it for them. We remove ourselves from their control and take away their power over us.
See, now that's the shit that I really like. And I'm not codependent on this by any means, but I really enjoy it. Like, it's like fucking with people. I love fucking with people.
Oh, yeah.
There is one of the partners. I told one of the partners. I don't even specifically say I wasn't interviewing anybody, but I was like, yeah, I'm just I'm meeting up with these people, and I didn't specifically say interview because typically in the interviewing process for me, I go to their Facebook profile and I want to know who they are. I'm like, okay, who are these individuals? Like, do I even want to deal with them? Do I even want to have them in my space? Okay, and then I'll pick up the cream of the crop from their Facebook profiles, and then I will, basically, I was going to show these people around the area and have a conversation with them and, kind of feel them out, see if they were capable of it, make sure they were interested in doing it, make sure, time and everything worked out. So it was like kind of an interview, but it wasn't like an official interview, right? And so the dude goes, well, are you going to interview them? And I'm like, I don't know, I go to their face, and I explain the whole process. And so the next day, or a couple of days later, I get one of the other partners is there, and he's like, trying to do an interview with him or something like that. And I just instantly laughed. I was like, that was so-and-so, wasn't it? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, I knew it. I'm like, oh my God. See, I can evaluate, I connect the dots pretty quick. Like, I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. He mentioned that, so let me ask. So, and I'm very direct. Like, I didn't just assume. Because I wasn't sure, but I did assume, I guess. I assumed it was from him, but I wasn't going to leave it as an assumption, So then, but that was, because he's going to be easy to fuck with. Anytime I want to fuck with that individual, I can just pull a fucking string because he's attached to every little detail. And I can just fucking, if he pisses me off or something, then I can just pull a string, to match that. If I was, if I wanted to have an unhealthy relationship.
Right.
And most times, like, because I'll do it out of fun. I used to do it out of vicious vengeance, typically. You know, I used to be really aggressive with it and very, you know...
It's very rare that it's that now.
Yeah.
It still can happen from time to time, but it's not.
Yeah. Like now I just do it out of fun and toying with people.
We're just still messed up, don't get me wrong.
And I'll just fucking like, I'll just poke the bear. I won't fucking prod the bear and stab him, but I'll just kind of, just to see where it'll go. Because those people need to learn. They do.
Why you to be the one to teach them?
God put me here to teach. I'm a preacher, baby. That leads me to a post that I've been thinking about doing recently. Fucking your spouse is your greatest spiritual teacher. Guess who taught me that?
Sean?
Nope, David.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Maybe I feel that. But I've definitely heard Sax talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. So anyways, that, and I don't exactly know where this is going as far as codependency issues. But like with the whole concept of your spouse is your greatest spiritual teacher, is like, you know, you spend the most time with them, you know, you're always with them, and they know you like very intimately, and you know, the ins and outs. So basically, you know, and sometimes they push your buttons intentionally, and other times they push your buttons unintentionally and shit like that. So, because if you're not around, you know, like coworkers and stuff, and coworkers can be good spiritual teachers too, but like your spouse is like your best spiritual teacher, because they know you the best and they're around you the most. So then, yeah, I think that's it. I don't fucking know where I was going with that. I forgot.
I don't know either.
Yeah. But anyways, just note that, like, you know, obviously your spouse does know you the most because you do spend the time with them and you are the most honest, raw, and open with them. So
I think what makes that person able to be their best spiritual teacher is they're going to trigger you the most.
Yeah, for sure.
And your triggers are teachers.
Yeah. Yep.
Can be. You don't always have to choose to look at them that way. Okay, moving on. One final thing, because then we're almost getting to the end of where I'm at, that I want to talk about, which I think is interesting. So another chapter is called Remove the Victim. And it's very easy for me to put on that role. But she talks about the Karpman Dharma triangle. And so what this includes, is codependents will rescue, then they persecute, then they end up victimized. So the rescuing piece is kind of what it sounds like, right? Like that caretaking, that rescuing, that like, I'm going to come save the day. One thing that I underlined in here for me personally, because this was my experience with a specific friend back when I had 0 boundaries, was, so what I underlined was, we get mad at them for what we've done. And so I would not have any boundaries. I would not express my desires or needs or wants in this relationship with this friend. And then I would have these like kind of somewhat boundaries, invisible boundaries in my head though. And then when those were stepped over, which this friend had no clue about because I never said anything, then I was pissy. Like I felt used. I felt like the doormat. I felt like this friend was just like taking control all the time. And it's like, I'm the one that is engaging in this behavior of not sharing things, of not setting boundaries, and then I'm pissed when these things happen. Not that that's necessarily a rescue, but just found it interesting because, like, again, like, as codependents, getting mad for something that they've done. And a lot of the caretaking, I think that sometimes can happen because I think especially if it comes to looking at, like, caring for somebody who has, like, a drug or alcohol problem, like, they come in and step in and do all of these things, and then they hold a bunch of resentment because they're like, well, you just went on a binge for 3 days, and now here you are sick all day, so I'm taking care of the kids, I'm, like, cleaning the house, I'm cooking dinner, and you're just laying there, like, okay, but you're the one that's deciding to do all these things and not holding this person accountable. Then that's where the persecution comes in. So being mad about the fact that they did come in and rescue or caretake and do all these things. And then the last one on that is being the victim.
Which makes them the victim because poor them, they
had
to do all this stuff while they binged and had to recover.
Yeah.
How do you think you've been coming along in your codependent issue or journey?
I think right now, if anything, oh look, I also started the chapter of independence. I think right now, if anything, it's just creating a lot of awareness for me. Like I've multiple times like pointed out, like with the pants thing and with my brother thing, like, wow, how codependent. Whereas like I probably would have like back of my mind known that like wasn't super healthy, but I'm like now calling it out and just like hyper aware of that.
Which is always a good an important step in personal development is when you start calling your own shit out, basically, because typically kind of like that whole thing you just talked about in the steps, there's always steps of pretty much every process. It's like, oh, you do this thing and then your friends will call you out, and then you'll deny, and then you go out and do it again and whatever else, and that's what you call a blind spot, basically. Like you didn't even know you were codependent until this book shined a light, or David shined a light.
I knew before this, but yeah, David was a big one.
So like, and you might not even known like what codependency was before that. So then you learn what codependency is, and you're like, oh wow, I might be that. And then you're just like, oh, okay, cool. Now I'm gonna go on this fucking. Now I know what's going on, and then you kind of, here and there observe it in other people's lives, and like, oh wow, that guy's really codependent on that. That guy's really codependent on that. I
said it a few times at work too, like in supervision, like lots of codependency in this family because blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and then I think after that, once you start recognizing in other people, that's when you start recognizing in yourself. And that's not necessarily codependent. That's any trait. That's
right.
any particular thing that that you may be trying to overcome or process or some shit like that.
And I think for me, like reading this book, because it'll get to the point where they talk, or she like starts talking about like, okay, what do you do about it? Like right now, it's a lot of like education and what are parts of it. But I think this is like, yes, I knew like. When David pointed out to me, like, okay, I probably have these tendencies, and we focus a lot on boundaries, which is a part of it, but I think this is taking it a step further because it's informing me, like, well beyond just boundaries. And so I think it's like, reading this book is allowing me to take a deeper look at it than just, I need boundaries. Like, yes, you do, they're so important, but I think there's a lot more, and that's what I said, like, reading, there's so much more to codependency than just...
There's always a call to action, I feel like, too. Like you doing the sweatpants thing, like instead of, like you recognize it, how codependent on me, but then at that point you should have just been like, you know what, fuck it. And it might have made, make your skin crawl just to like do it, to go against the grain, so.
Well, yeah, especially because that one would have been an easy practice. And I literally thought, like, at work before I even got home, like, ooh, I'm gonna get in comfies, I'm gonna like chill, and then I get home and then it's like
to that decision.
Until you weren't.
Exactly. Until I wasn't. And then I changed my mind, and then
I was back committed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been a good opportunity to practice. Even the surrender thing, like you brought up, it like this will be a great time for you to practice. Like when you used the bun that I pulled out for myself, and so I literally got a different bun from the bag because I didn't want the one bun that
you got from me because it was shitty.
It wasn't shitty. I'm just more particular.
Not eating the shitty bun. Or the fucking shitty bagels. Oh, I can't eat the shitty bagels.
Okay, that's different.
No,
I
it's
really
not.
straight up do not like those bagels.
Oh.
It's not bagels. It's not that I'm like not surrendering. I straight up would never eat those again if I could.
Well, we got another fucking bag and I ate the whole last bag.
You did not. I had one. One or two.
I had one. No.
1 out of 5.
I don't think you
1
had
out of
that.
6. Yes, I did. Because I'm very intentional when I have those because I don't like to toast them super long. That's why I don't like them because the top gets all gross. Anyway, so that's where I'm at right now. It's just lots of awareness, and maybe I need to put a little bit more into practice.
Do you think there's always a codependent? There's obviously always someone more codependent, but do you think there's always like
no
codependent person in the relationship?
I think that there are some relationships that people got together super healthily.
Do you think that let me change that. In any relationship, so like, if you have you and I, and then we're have kids and whatever else, do you think there's always a codependent person in that, like, immediate family? Or, yeah, I guess even immediate, I guess.
I mean, obviously when you bring kids into it, they have no choice but to be dependent on parents to an extent, especially when they're younger.
Yeah.
That's different to me though, because that's like normal, healthy.
Can be normal and healthy.
Well, yeah, I mean,
but
if you're still like caring for this kid the same way you did for them when they were 2, when they're 14, like yeah, there's a problem.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think in the obviously young years, like that's completely normal. But at the same time, like that kid being codependent in that relationship is what's normal. If that person then becomes the adult becomes codependent, then that's
fucked up.
unhealthy.
Which I think, well, this is my personal belief, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think most parents become codependent on their kids.
And I was gonna say, like, obviously we don't have kids, so it's easy, I think, and for us to sit here and say that, I don't know, that we will never do that or blah blah blah. But I could totally see how it would be easy to fall into that.
Not for me specifically, but I definitely see how that can happen to you. And I can see how it can happen to most parents.
That's what I mean. Like, I can understand why it's easy to end up there.
Yeah, but that point, that means you have to be conscious and aware of, like, boundaries and shit like that. I think I'm going to be...
Well, and getting needs met that aren't from your kid, like, that's...
Yeah, Richard, John.
Yes.
John Bradshaw.
Yes.
Talks a lot about that. What's that series called? David told me about it.
Something family?
Yeah. But it talks about trauma and basically how dad can get attached to the daughter, and the mother can easily get attached to the son because they're not getting, the husband and the parents aren't getting their needs met by their significant other, so then they go to their fucking children for it, which is twisted as fuck.
And it doesn't always mean that there's something real creepy going on. Like, that can lead to sexual abuse and things like that, but it doesn't always mean that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I didn't even actually think about that, but it's just super fucked up to watch, a individual turn to a child to have needs met by your significant other, because those are dramatically different relationships.
Well, and I hear too, like, sometimes in the work I do, like, I can again understand why it might be easy to feel this way, but if that's legit, like parents saying like, oh yeah, my mini me, she's my best friend. Like, as a 20-something-year-old, your 3-year-old kid should not be your best friend. Like, that's not healthy at all.
Yeah, and obviously that can, if that's literal and stuff like that.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, if you're just saying these things, like, I love them, we spend so much time together, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's
he's my best little buddy or something like that.
Right, but I've heard, and I feel one specific client, I think I could just tell that they're, like, for real. And they don't have a bunch of support and whatever.
Yep.
I'm not judging, I'm just saying that it's not healthy.
Yeah, and I feel like that happens a lot in single parents or divorced parents. Because of that type of stuff, But
the dynamics.
The dynamics change because you don't have that other person, Like, so then you have the kid, like the kid has the mom and the mom has the kid, and that's it. Like the mom doesn't have the dad and the kid doesn't have the dad. So there's not a triangle or a different dynamic to assist in creating a healthy relationship. Whereas, now you're only other dependent, because you're always dependent on somebody to some degree, like I'm dependent on you to some degree, you're dependent on me, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like, attached to the hip.
Well, yeah, that's like some of the like healthy normal levels of that.
Yeah.
Especially being in a relationship, like if there was complete detachment, like there would be no need for the other person. Yeah. If we were detached in every single way for everything, like. Clearly there's some need to have dependency in some way, shape, or form. Yeah,
we're always dependent on humans in general. Whether that's mom, dad, brother, sister, wife, kid, whatever. Neighbor, yep. Government. That's what we should talk about, the codependency of the government to the people and the people of the government. I'm not codependent on the government at all, but there are lots of people codependent on the government for food stamps and housing and blah, blah, blah. And the government is always codependent on the people, because without the people, they have nothing. They don't have the funds because the people there's no one to pay them. They don't have anybody to rule over. Like, us the people, like, we don't fucking need the government. So, fuck the government.
Oh, great. YouTube's probably going to take this one down. They did I can't remember if they took one down or warned me and said, like, this will not be published. And I just deleted it and did it again and it let it go through. But I was like,
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder what it was.
Yeah, I can't remember now. It was a while back.
Um, yeah, codependency issues are interesting to me. I think they're a natural part of life, just like anything else. But
Well, I think to some degree, not to some degree, because every behavior serves a purpose, or else we wouldn't be doing it. So like it has served a purpose, but there becomes a point when it is no longer healthy or helpful. It's like damaging to the relationship, to yourself, to this other person. Like
yeah, that also brings up a point, like the fact that I don't know who talks about it, but like you don't need your significant other. You want your significant other. Like you don't. I don't need you for money. You don't need me for money. I don't need you for this. You don't need me for that. And like there's a point like where, you basically like that. Well, that's the codependency essentially. Like you don't want to have that part because if one needs one, then there's an unlevel of power essentially. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
then with the wrong individual, they can withhold that over the other
right.
individual
Abuse
and
that.
create a very unhealthy relationship. So
It also reminds me like of like if there's like a need like that, like of a like a gripping, like a
yeah.
you know.
It's so interesting when people say that they need somebody. I need you. Right? Like, okay, I need you to help me or whatever. Yeah, but like, when there's like a real fucking like tie to that, like you're just like, what the fuck? I don't fucking need nobody, Like, fuck that shit. Like, if you were as sad as it would be if you died tomorrow, I would be fine.
As sad as it would be.
Like.
I would be too.
Yeah, you'd take it a lot harder and shit, I think.
Oh, for sure.
But, I don't think you'd take it harder, I just think it would last longer. I take it in a similar hardness. Yeah. I just don't think it would last as long. I can overcome things really quick. Of course, you did overcome Tazzy's. Like, you were codependent with Tazzy, I think.
Yeah, I did super well.
Yeah. And that was really, it was rough. I mean, but...
Like, yeah, I thought I was going to be rocked for a while.
Yeah.
But...
I was prepping myself already, knowing his health was declining, So, like, I would literally sit with him because I don't know if I was codependent, but I really had a dependency on him.
Oh, Tazzy definitely met some of my needs.
Oh, yeah.
Like, cuddle needs and my lovey needs and nothing weird, but I just loved that freaking dog a lot.
So, like, I would literally sit there and, be there with him, like in whatever moments, well before him passing, like when his health started declining, and I would just like think like this is one of the last times that I'm gonna be spending with him. I snuggle with him, and I'd really take in the moment or whatever because of me knowing. So I was prepping myself. I was already mentally preparing. Like I'm already mentally preparing for my parents' death. Like, I
think I did that a little too with him.
Yeah.
And I quit saying he was gonna live forever. I said that for a while. Then I stopped.
Well, yeah, because that's gonna fucked up thing. That's gonna fuck up your brain harder because you're essentially lying to it because your brain, your subconscious doesn't know the difference. If you tell your subconscious that he's gonna live forever, I always to be honest, I kind of always thought that he would live forever too, in a slight whatever, just because he'd been around for literally like half of my life. So.
It's crazy now because I look back on like Snapchat and I'm like, whoa. Like obviously we knew he like was like, his head was caving in and he was getting old and whatever, but I like look back and I'm like, holy crap, like that happened like pretty fast and it was like pretty dramatic, but I don't remember actually feeling that way. Anyway.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we had sinky head, so we knew that wasn't great, but it was just, looking back, I'm like, whoa. It was pretty drastic.
Yeah. Yeah, you can be codependent on a fucking animal. I know people are codependent on animals. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Stop it. Fuck.
Okay, we still have 6 minutes.
Why are you trying to rush the process, bro?
Because we gotta make sure that we get it in the time.
Don't try to rush the process. We got plenty of time. Life is good. Life is grand. We should talk about words after I read that word book.
Oh, there you go. We might have to come back to codependency part 2 once I finish the book.
Yeah, once you overcome your codependency, that'd probably be a good time.
Thought about maybe going to Al-Anon, but don't know about it.
Excuse me. Okay, so yeah, that's about it. Don't be codependent, otherwise you're a bitch.
Not at all.
Everybody's codependent to some degree.
I would suggest if you truly think that you have like some pretty intense codependent tendencies, to read this book. It's been really good so far. I wasn't sure about it at first, but I just happened to randomly grab it because I was like, well, I've been wanting to read it. It doesn't sound super interesting, but like now that I'm in it, it's pretty good.
And that's called Codependence No More by Melody somebody.
By Melody Beattie. She also writes this other cool, like, not a devotional, but kind of, like, every day is a new little, like, written excerpt that's, like, pretty cool.
Is that scripture based?
No.
No?
Mm-mm. She does talk about God and stuff, but not a lot, like, at all. She doesn't quote Bible verses at all, but, like, in one part she talked about, like, giving people the power is basically giving up, like, our God-given right to... So, briefly here and there, but not scripture-based by any means.
Cool. Well, I think that's about it then. So, wrap her up.
Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram. Like us on Facebook. I'm still at a place where I'm literally just saying when we have new episodes, but maybe one day we'll be more active on there and have more stuff going on.
I will get this uploaded to Spotify and other platforms this week because I will not let my phone die because I plugged it in, if you guys didn't notice. If you're watching the channel.
He wanted to start this with 18% and said, that should be enough, right? Just grab a charger.
So anyways, I did. Yeah. I think that's it. So, see you guys.
Bye.